Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Hey everyone, welcome to Bold Book of the Day. My name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today's episode is with Mr. Jason Dennen. He is a Christian, author, inspirational speaker, skydiver, mountain climber, triathlete, and explorer. Jason may describe himself on most days as just an everyday guy, but when you read his book, you will see for yourself that he is extraordinary. He was born and raised in New Jersey and moved to Colorado to explore the wide open spaces in the West and test his limits. Jason tested his limits and was in a skydiving accident that almost took his life. The doctor who performed emergency life saving surgery on him stared at his comatose body in utter disbelief the day after the surgery and proclaimed that no one survives what Jason had survived. No one. Jason survived and wrote a book about his experience and the lessons he's learned. 8 Days Till Sunrise, a true story of survival, rebirth, and discovering my purpose in life. This is our bold book of the day. Please welcome author Mr. Jason Dennen. Thank you for
Good
joining
afternoon.
us. Jason, skydiving,
hmm
please share with us why skydiving?
Sure. Well, I think it started out where I really even became aware of skydiving was I'd ride my bike or drive my car past this little airport a couple miles from my house, and I would see those parachutes in the air, and it made me think. I said, can I actually do that? I mean, there's a you can think of things and there are challenges to do, and there's a big difference between thinking you can do it and actually doing it. Yes, it's like, can I do I have the courage to get on that airplane, jump out, deploy your parachute, fix anything that goes wrong on the way down, and land it safely? So really, at first, it was just a challenge to see if I could do it. It became so much more than that. Once you realize it's not really all about adrenaline and the first few jumps of whether you can do it or not, you learn a lot more about yourself, lots of life's lessons along the way. So you join a tribe of people that of the other skydivers they have an amazing bond with. So yeah, skydiving is an amazing experience.
Wow, it sounds like you are one of those people that just loves a challenge.
Yeah, I think thinking about it, it's like you're unknowingly attracted to things that you don't realize why you're attracted to them until much later. I think I'm very attracted to things when you're in the actual moment, where there's no future, there's no past, there's just that second. Whether it's rock climbing, ice climbing, climbing mountains, skydiving, um, it's you're freed from everything else in the world but that second, and living in that present moment is it's an amazing feeling. I think we get a lot away from that a lot with all the distractions we have in life and beeps that go off on your phone or your computer, all these other things. And it's a special moment to be completely in the moment and overtaken just by that one moment and living right then. So I think thinking back on some of the things I've participated in my life or passions and things like that kind of all had that same in the moment feeling.
Adventurous. You are adventurous. How did you come up with the message of your book?
Sure. Well, I mean, the message was really just the message I lived during the book. It was, I spent 8 days in a coma, 3.5 months in the hospital, 3 months not be able to put any weight on my body, 11 months of rehab, and then, eventually coming back and racing a triathlon in less than a year. And the main message was that all the lessons you've learned in your life serve you when you really need it. And I think I was living those lessons that whole time, but it took me a little time after the accident, kind of after the going back to the race, to kind of think about what the main lesson of it all was. And it was, building a strong foundation. And that foundation are all the lessons you learn in life that you put together that will serve you when you're in your most difficult struggles of your life. If you've built those lessons up from things you've learned in your life, they'll really guide you through the most difficult times you go through.
Wow. And now you've written this book that can just give hope and inspiration to so many. But you've gone through some, really tough times. Please tell us about the impact of the accident that really is the underpinning, the reason why you wrote this book.
Sure. Well, I was skydiving like I had done a lot on weekends in the 3 or 4 years before the actual accident or the crash, and it was something that I did. I was passionate about. I loved doing. It took me away from the day to day things you're going through in life. Like I talked about that, you're in the moment the whole time, and that's a beautiful thing about it. So I was coming in for a landing on a field I had landed on hundreds of times before. I was about 150 feet off the ground when a huge gust of wind came off the mountains, picked me up and slammed me violently forward. So it increased my speed greatly. And from 150 feet off the ground where I was at the time, you have about 5 seconds before you land. And it increased. I was definitely going to land on the grass before that wind, but it pushed me really violently forward and increased my speed, which meant there was a fence and an airplane hangar in front of me. And when you're that close to the ground, turning is really not an option because turning, you basically collapse the side of the parachute. Your parachute dives towards the ground, and that's what creates a turn. If you're 1,500 feet off the ground, it doesn't matter because if you lose 200 feet and then your parachute levels off and flies, well, you're okay. You're way off the ground. But when you're at 150 feet off the ground and you dive it, you'll dive directly into the ground, and the chance of you surviving is probably pretty low. So I had to do nothing, basically take a deep breath and just see what's going to happen. And second by second, when you count it down from those 5 seconds to that 1 second, I didn't know whether I was going to hit the fence, land on the grass. It was hard to tell, but I really couldn't do anything at that point other than just see what was going to happen. And with about a second left, I said, "There's no way I'm landing on this grass. I'm coming in way too fast." I hit a cattle fence, which is there's like 3 strands of wire. I smashed through that. It basically I felt it snap on my chest and my abdomen, and 10 feet behind it was that metal airplane hangar, which I impacted going around 30 miles an hour head on, and my body just kind of exploded and detonated. I blacked out. They called 911. They called a Flight for Life helicopter to fly me to the nearest level 1 trauma center for life-saving surgery. And the first person that came upon me, I would find out later. I thought when I hit the building, I thought I said I'm okay to myself. I guess I'm not really sure, but apparently what I said was, which they relayed to me months later. The first person on the scene started talking to me, and I said, "Don't call anyone. Just give me a minute. I'll be okay." Which luckily they called 911 because I definitely wasn't okay, and they could see the crumpled body on the ground was pretty broken up. But I think that was a sign that I was already fighting for my life. My mind just clicked in and said, okay, I wasn't mentally there. I was blacked out to direct my body what to do. But from experiences that I've had in the past, whether it's in the mountains and had, situations that could have ended badly, I kind of learned how to will my body ahead to survive, you know, freezing temperatures and frostbite and things like that. So I think my body just knew what to do when it was in a situation where it needed to save my life, and it kicked in. And I think those words that came out of my mouth, I was completely blacked out, so I didn't consciously say it. But I think that kind of summarizes what I was doing at the time. Was like, if I could will myself to be okay, then maybe I could get through this situation, whatever it was. But yeah, basically I hit so hard on the left side of my body when I hit that building, 10 of my 12 ribs broke,
Of
and my heart,
course.
those ribs impacted my heart, and my heart exploded out of what it normally sits in, called the pericardial sac, which protects your heart. And it was on the right side of my body and all twisted up. The doctors would later say to my family that it was the first time they had ever performed that surgery on anyone, because no one had ever made it alive with the injury I had to my heart. And the rest of my body was destroyed too. I think it was 20 total bones, 5 organs that had to be fixed, including the heart. But so I was incredibly lucky, and certainly uh, someone was definitely looking out for me, and luckily, God was looking out for me, and had a reason for me to survive, and a purpose for me to get back on track with my life, and a reason for me to spread the message to other people who are struggling through in life. So
Yeah. Wow, wow, wow. What an incredible story of, you know, how perseverance, because you had perseverance from the very beginning, like, I'm going to make it, I am going to live. You don't,
mhm,
you, as a matter of fact, said, I'm okay, to the first responder, or the
mhm,
first person that responded to you. So that is, your mindset is already, I'm going to survive whatever this is. And you did. But what made you, how did you, through the healing process and the putting back together, how did you survive that? Because that must have been hard, to say the least. How did you survive?
sure. I mean, so after the accident, and after I got out of the coma after 8 days, I basically had to lay in bed for 10 weeks and not move. About the only movement I had was my hand like this, and that was in a cast. The rest of my body, I could not move. I had to lay in bed, and it gave me a lot of time. It was a blessing because it gave me time to think. I mean, life is so at that time before that accident, I was so working so many hours and doing so many things. I was so distracted in life. It was very there weren't many times where I was sitting there and got to think about life and just lay there. And the blessing was that I had to lay there and I couldn't do anything else to distract myself really. Um, and it gave me time to think of what was my purpose in life, and was I going down the right path before the accident, which I didn't think I was. And a refocused purpose in those 10 weeks. So the 10 weeks was super difficult to go through, but it was what I needed when I needed it. I dealt with a lot of guilt because obviously I put my family through a horrible accident. Because at the end, you could say, well, it wouldn't happen if the wind didn't blow you, but blow you into the building. But the reality is, I decided to jump out of that plane. No one else told me to jump out of that plane, and they had to deal with what it must have looked like when they saw me in the coma, or got that call that said, you better fly out to Denver right away. Your son might not live through this. What it must have felt like for my siblings and friends to hear about that accident, and I might not survive. So that was a really difficult time, and but I had to go through that in order to recover. So it got to a point where I was just really miserable, and I kind of felt helpless because I always feel like if I can do something towards a situation, then I'm okay. But when you could lay there and do nothing, you kind of feel helpless and go, oh, I can't even move to get myself better. And my therapy should just come in every day and move my arm. So I had to cast my left arm from shoulder to wrist, and they would move it an inch. I couldn't even move myself, and I was on the verge of passing out. The pain was so horrible.
Mm.
And it makes you question yourself and doubt yourself. You're like, well, if someone can't move my arm an inch, and if I can't get through that, how am I going to make the rest of my body work when it needs to? But it took that doubt to kind of hit bottom. And then a psychiatrist came out of the room. They sent the psychiatrist in. Thought I was not doing well. And to me, that, looking back, that's the normal progression of coming back from something like that. You have to hit a bottom and then you come back up. And he spent about a minute with me, and I just told him, I felt terrible guilt and terrible pain, and I was feeling doubt. And he thought the best thing was to give me antidepressants. So he started just naming them off and said, hey, what do you think about taking those? My first thought is, you're asking me what I think I should take? I don't have a medical degree. Never asked me if I have ever taken antidepressants before. And it put me into a rage as soon as he said that. I was like, he's just taking a shortcut, and he wants to drag me into his shortcut to, kick my problems down the road, deal with it later, or maybe I'd get to the next hospital and I'd have to deal with it then. And I knew, even at moments when they had me on medication and my mind wasn't thinking 100% clearly, I knew there was a reason I was laying in that bed. I had to take advantage of those weeks that I was laying in that bed. And at that time, I didn't know how long I was going to be laying in that bed, to really deal with things and not just go, oh, forget it, make me numb. I'll just watch TV, not really deal with anything. So I kicked that psychiatrist out of the room and told him, don't ever come back in my room ever again. And unknowingly, that started the upward rise again. So at that point, I said, no, I'm not helpless. I need to find something to do in order to come back. Now, I can't move my body, I can't move my arm, but there's something I could do to prepare for that. And I knew I had to mentally prepare for the journey ahead. There was going to be lots of pain, there was going to be lots of unknowns, ups and downs, there's going to be setbacks and things like that. So first I had to train my mind, then train my body for the pain. Pain wasn't going to go away anytime soon. And in the condition I was in, they were more than happy to give me as many pain medications as I wanted. I mean, within limits, obviously, but
Right.
I just said, well, that's not the way, because I hated it. The feeling it gave you when you took pain medication, it's like made me fuzzy, not think straight. And I knew the one thing I had was my brain worked. So
Mm-hmm.
that needed to be used to build back my mental state back up before I could physically do anything again, because I wasn't cleared for the doctors yet to start moving my body. But if I got my mind right, I knew it would lead the rest of my recovery. If that was right, then I could come back. So I knew that was the first thing, and I didn't want to ever take drugs anymore. So as little as possible, no pain medication, no, definitely no
Wow.
antidepressants. And I needed to feel raw. I needed to feel pain in order for me to get out of the situation that I was. Because you have to hate the situation you're in to get to a new situation. If you're happy
Ooh,
where you are now,
ooh, don't sleep on that message, guys. Write it down. Say that again.
change happens when you're unhappy with your current situation.
Yes.
If life's grand, why are you going to make a change? So I needed to feel that pain if I wanted to start getting up and walking again when I was able to and they cleared me. So I knew misery is what I needed in order to get to where I wanted to be. So I wanted all in. I didn't want to take my whatever I felt, no matter how much of pain it was. I needed to feel the pain to get to where I want to be.
Is
So,
that why you wrote this book?
well, the book came about when, um, so my thought was, I was like, I have a second chance to live, and you better do something with a second chance to live. I knew beforehand I was trying to figure out how I could help people. It was on my list of things to do for a long time. I thought maybe I'm going to volunteer at a hospital. I didn't really have any skill in terms of that. It's like I had to go through the worst thing in my life and come back from it before I had the ability to ever counsel anyone else going through their toughest thing. So this was a gift. And the story of the accident is the bigger gift, because I realized people would always ask me in the hospital uh, to tell the story. And I mean, I had to tell it 100 times in the first, 30 days. And at first, I
Wow.
kind of got, I had a little bit of PTSD from it. I was, I was laying in the bed. There was nothing really else to think about. And I was like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to keep telling this story. But then that one night after that, it kind of everything changed after that psychiatrist got kicked out of my room by me. And I started thinking about things. I realized every time I tell that story, and usually it's medical staff that would ask, and there's so many different people that are coming in your room, new people they'll would always ask.
Mhm.
And I realized how it helped them when I started telling the story, because I realized the story wasn't about me. It was the story was to tell to other people to help them through their life.
Mm.
So I had to take it away from, no, this is not about me. It's about the change I see in someone else when I tell the story, because they would go, I was expecting something else when I came in your room. And I wasn't expecting you, because one of the things I would do, I told this story so many times, I would try to get them to laugh as quickly as possible during the story. It was my little game to entertain myself.
Mhm.
That you know, they they would start opening up to me with things they're going through in their life. So I was like, well, all I have to do is tell this story of something that just happened to me, and someone else is willing to open up in a way that I would have never connected with them if this hadn't happened to me. So I realized how important that gift was. So at first I was trying to figure out, well, what do you do with this gift? And at first I thought, well, maybe I'll just speak, churches or different places, and tell the message of what happened to me, and kind of just outline, you know, the things that I use to recover it, and maybe it would help someone else if maybe they use those same tools. Um, and then I started speaking, and I got finished with a speaking engagement, and someone came up to me afterwards and they said, and this was like the third time that I had spoken about what happened. And they said, my friend is going through a really difficult situation in life, the opioid addiction, and do you have anything to give them? And the first thing I said, well, can't we just go to their house now and I'll talk to them? Because he said, I liked your story and I want them to know more about it, but they won't come out of the house. And they said, well, they won't even open the door. They're like, do you have anything to give me? And at that time I didn't have anything. Um, and I thought, maybe I'm really missing the mark on how to connect to people, because if I speak at any kind of speaking engagement, well, you only can connect to the people that show up there, and maybe the people that need help the most are people that aren't there. And on that drive home from that speaking engagement, I said, well, maybe I need to write this down, because if I had something written down, I could have gave that person that book to at least, and they could have read it in their own time, when they wanted to, and maybe it would take them a days or however long, but it was going to be there for them to look at.
Yes.
So I thought it was the responsibility beyond what I thought the initial thing that I was supposed to do was to write that book, because before people would say, oh, you should write a book. I said, I have no interest in it, but to help people, then that was a reason enough to write the book. Um, because really writing the book wasn't an easy thing, because I had to relive a lot of dark things that I went through that aren't
Mm.
pleasant to go through. And when I was writing each day, sometimes I would finish after a couple hours, and I would I was like, well, I don't understand why I'm kind of in a bad mood after I'm finished writing, because I was totally into writing and I was totally fine. It was over, and I realized, well, you that after a week or two, I was like, well, you're reliving some of the most horrible things you ever happened to you in life. That's why you don't feel that great afterwards. But it was my responsibility to deal with that PTSD or whatever I had to go through to write that and relive those memories,
Yes.
because it was going to help. Hopefully, it was going to help someone else in the future.
Yes.
Um, so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm fine with that. I'm not going to feel great while I'm writing this, and that's okay. But it's also therapeutic to go through that, to think about things, because some things you do relive on a daily basis. If I go out on quiet days and run or walk or things like that, even for the couple years leading up to that book, I would think about what happened all the time, and
Hmm.
and sometimes that's a good thing.
So,
Um,
how did you feel after you completed the book? Because uh, during the writing the manuscript, you
mhm.
started to feel bad, or not understand why you were moody. So, how did it feel when you finally completed the book? How did you feel?
I think it sort of took weight off my shoulders a little bit, because it, it's odd. It was oddly like a lot of things that I've done, whether it was skydiving or climbing and things like that. It was like when I was writing that book, I was completely in the moment of writing it, and so it was a similar. I mean, it's obviously way different from jumping out of a plane, but it was the same mindset of being completely in it. So I was so obsessed with getting these words on the pages, um, that it was kind of like, it was almost like landing with your parachute safely this time when I finished the book. But I was like, oh, okay, I'm finished with that. It was something that wasn't in my normal personality, because I'm pretty quiet about things that I go through. Um, Although if people ask, I'm always happy to share things. I mean, prior to the accident and such. So it really put emotions, things I went through, really out there, and that's a challenge into itself. So you're just like, well, I'm putting all this out there, and then you're like, gosh, I hope it helps somebody, and I hope it was it does what I was intending it to do.
Yeah.
So you have to put yourself out there and feel vulnerable, and it's just like when I speak, it's like, um, you're just putting yourself out there, all emotions and feelings of what you went through, and it's not always an easy thing, but and sometimes you have fear about it as well. But fear can do two things. It's like, fear can stop you from doing something that you were meant to do, or fear is also there to protect you, and you're just
Mhm.
like, well, is this protecting myself from, you know could be criticism or something like that, or is it stopping me from something that I should be doing? And I decided it was stopping me. Fear was stopping me from doing something that I should be doing. And so I said, there could be criticism. People could say, well, you did this when you were skydiving wrong, or whatever the case may be, or I would have done it differently. And it's like, well, you put yourself out there for criticism, but if it helps at least one person, then it's worth it.
Yes.
And that's
What
why,
would you say to the person that is out there? They have a message, or they think they have a message that they want to share. What kind of encouragement would you give to them?
yeah. Um, I mean, if you think you have a message out there that's important enough to share, then it doesn't matter how personal it is. If you think it's worth doing, then absolutely go for it. You're gonna feel emotions of uh you know um oh, what's someone gonna say about this book if they don't like it, and the reality is maybe everyone's not gonna like it, and that's
Mhm.
okay. But if you speak your truth, then I say, then you have nothing to fear. Like I said to someone else that about the book, I was like, it's the truth. So because someone said, does that really happen? I said exactly what actually happened. That was the truth. And when you write your book, you could tell any truth you want because it's your truth. If someone doesn't
That's
like
right.
it, well then, that's okay.
Good advice. I agree. I think that a lot of times when we have a message to share, it doesn't matter if it's in a book or you just feel compelled to share an experience that has taught you a lesson. Sometimes you don't want to share the lesson because you are fearful of how they will receive it. But if you are compelled to share a message that you know is hopeful, go out there, share your message, just
Sure.
like Jason did.
And
Jason,
and
you, yes.
oh, I was just going to say, one thing that about sharing, things that aren't necessarily pleasant, that maybe, whether they say don't put you in a good light, or whatever the case may be. Somebody who I know read the book and then said, I never knew you felt like that about, you know, certain situation that happened in the book.
Mhm.
They're like, of working too many hours and things like that at work. They're like, well, I didn't realize you felt like that. They're like, but you sharing that in your book, you hit the spot, because I felt that person felt the same way as I had felt. And
Look at
now they
that.
feel like, when you go through these struggles in life, it's like sometimes you feel like you're alone, but we all struggle through lots of things in life, and we're not alone in our struggles. Other people go through the same thing, and you can't think, well, I'm the only person going through this at this time. And it felt good that it connected with that person to, they were just like, oh, someone else felt the same way as when I was going through the same
That
thing in my
is
life. So
why I believe it is so important to speak up and to share, because you never know whose life you're going to help. You never know who is going through something similar. And you just sharing gave that person, uh, hope, because he's seen, okay, you were feeling that way. And now look at you. Now, even though I'm feeling this way, I have some hope. He can glean from you. So that's beautiful story. Thank you so much. I have a million questions for you, but I know the audience, they are going to want to ask you, where to get this book. Where can they find this wonderful, inspiring story?
sure. So you can find it on my website, jasondennen.com, and also at, any other place you would find a book on the internet. I'm not going to plug those outlets where those people make billions of dollars, but you know where you get books.
Exactly.
But if you want one that's signed and I'll give you a personal message in your book, come to my website and order it for me, and I'll personally sign it, send you a message on it. If you get those other places, you could order it there too, but you're not going to get the same personal signature on it, coming from the big Fortune 500 company. So
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Tell me, before you go, I just want to know, you sound like such an adventurous person. Who do you say are the top three people that has influenced your life?
sure. Well, I'd say number one, my mom and my dad. I think the values they instilled, whether it's work ethic, which certainly helped me in the accident and coming back from that for sure. Going after what you want to go after in life. To be relentless. If you want to do something, go after it. If you be the person you proclaim to be. So if you say you're something, you better live by that, what you say you are. So
Wow.
I think those are certainly the most influential people. I mean, they don't climb. They never climbed rocks. They never had anything to do with jumping out of planes. But the reality is, all the lessons they taught me growing up, is what allowed me to survive that accident. It allowed me to live life and influenced me how I live my life. So those are two of the most important people, or are the most important people in my life too, and why I've survived and why how I live life. So
Beautiful. Is there a third?
oh, I mean, there's so many other people that have influenced along the way. I mean, just thinking in terms of the accident, I mean, so many people that worked with me in the hospital that took time out of their day. It's like people can go, so far to do what you call their job. I was blown away by people doing more than what their normal job would be to take care of me and guide me through. I mean, whether it's people that they would say, well, you're so broken up, I wasn't even sure how to treat you, the therapist. And they said I had to open up my medical textbooks and my therapist textbooks to figure out how to, while they're at home, you're like, wow, this person is spending time out of their job to research how to treat me. And I was like blown away. Or like it happened to be my birthday in the hospital and they brought in a cake for me. Or
Wow.
another therapist would bring in go to a bakery and bring cake to me. Or I left one hospital, one of my therapists visited me at the next hospital on a
Oh,
Sunday and his off day to visit me and just hang out with me. So the yeah, I was blown away by the treatment I would receive in the hospital and how much people rooted for me. And I speak to some of those people to this day, a couple years later, where just last night I was at my physical therapist. His daughter had a basketball game, high school basketball game, and I was hanging out with him and watching the high school basketball game, or her high
wow.
school basketball game. So I still have relationships with the people, and it's like I don't forget, and I kind of
Wow.
the thank you. I went back and went to visit all those hospitals and thanked all those people that had helped me, or as many as people I could thank, because some of those people were working on me and I wasn't even conscious. But the way I think about it, the best way to repay them is to pay it forward to someone else and help someone else going through a difficult time. Because saying a thank you to somebody is, to me, is just never enough, because they don't realize, or you can't even explain to them how great of an effect they had on your life and where you are today because of what they did for you. And hopefully I can pass that on to other people struggling through life, and that's the way I hope to repay those people for what they did for me.
Wonderful. Big up to the medical staff. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, I am, a medical personnel myself. So just to hear that you were impacted just because you understood the work that they put in, even though they weren't, you know, they weren't at work, but they were doing their research at home, and you realize that we do that all the time though. You have an intriguing case and you say, you know what, let me look up some more things that I can do to help this patient, because you want to do your best. You want to treat people how you would like to be treated, or how you'd like your family members to be treated. And so, yes, we do go above and beyond, most of us. So big up
Yeah.
yourself. If you're a medical personnel out there, we love you.
And unfortunately they don't always get the thank you they deserve, because you know I
Yes.
saw just some, when I was in the hospital, some terrible things happen. I can't imagine seeing what they see on a daily basis. Some difficult outcomes. And when I was at one of the hospitals, one of the nurses told me, when I was talking to him, he said, some of the most difficult part about his job was the fact that people leave the hospital and he never knows what happens to them afterwards. So he gets to
Mm-hmm.
treat them for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, and do they ever recover? Do they not? And after they said that, I realized, I was like, okay, part of my job is, if he's feeling that way, then a lot of other people are feeling that way too. And part of the
Yes.
job was, after I get home from the hospital, recover a little bit and can show some improvement, I'm going to go back to those hospitals and thank those people for helping me. And it was amazing, because I went to the ICU of the first hospital I went to, and I showed up and
No one would recognize you, I don't think.
yeah, probably not. I was like, I'll probably look a little bit different. I had a lot of grass on me or whatever else, when I was laying in that coma. But I was surprised that what they said was, and I had to explain, you know, who I was, and once they said, I don't think a lot of people crash in the side of buildings that come into the ICU, so they kind of triggered once I said that. But the one thing they said was, they're like, well, no one ever comes and visits the ICU. And as soon as they said that, I thought to myself in my own, I was like, I came to the right place because I'm like, if they don't get the thank you they need, then people are I mean, they need to know how important they are, because I can't imagine what it must be like treating someone who's laying in an ICU, uh, and how difficult that is, and how grateful I was for everything they did for me. So. And that happened a couple times when I went to different hospitals to visit. Like, oh, no one ever comes back here and visits, the folks that Flight for Life folks, or the people in the
Yeah.
emergency area and things like that. And every time I'd hear that, I'd go, I'm glad I was like, I'm glad I came, because you need to hear how important you are, because I wouldn't be here today unless it was for you. So
Thank you. You are an amazing person. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I'm sure the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff and personnel, they appreciate those thank you. Absolutely is important to just go out and share with people how you're feeling, because although we're doing our jobs because we love our jobs, it is nice to get a thank you, a heartfelt thank you. So thank you for doing that. Just returning brings me joy. Now, there are three questions that I always ask,
mhm.
and I'd love to ask them to you. To hear what are your what is your thought on what is one bold promise that you can make to the audience that's listening out there today?
Well, the promise I made to myself is be who I proclaim to be. And
Mhm.
when I was starting to recover and I was in the hospital, that first day when I switched to I guess the fourth hospital I was in, um, they put me through a shower, and for the first time I was sitting up in a wheelchair, and they put me in front of a mirror. And it was the first time I saw my body, because when you're laying in a bed, you really can't get a sense of what you really can look like, and I didn't have very much flexibility. So I was looking at myself without a shirt on. I saw all muscle had gone away because I was laying in that bed for 10 and a half weeks. And on top of that, there was the trauma to my body. So it was just skin hanging off bone. And I looked and saw all the scars, the scar that goes from my clavicle all the way to my waist, where they opened my chest up to fix me, and my diaphragm. At first I was like, wow, it was hard to look at. And I was just like, okay, this is day one. That muscle's going to come back. But then I it looked up eye to eye with myself through that mirror, and it was the first time I saw myself in the mirror since the accident. And and I just asked myself that question. I was like, are you who you proclaim to be? Because if I am, because I always said I'm at my best when things are at their worst, and I always kind of got that from going through some difficult things in the mountains when I was, climbing, and I always felt I'm not the fastest, I'm not the best climber, but when horrible weather comes in and life's on the line, then I can find a way to get out of there or survive through what I'm going through. So, a lot of times we can build in our minds who we think we are, but the reality is who we are. If we have to be that same person at our worst as we are at that thought we have at our best. And I thought, if I'm that same person that thinks he's the guy who can get through anything in the mountains, I better prove it now, because I'm at my lowest. And if I follow that, and I am who I proclaim I am, then each day is going to get a little bit better, and I'm going to get out of this situation. I'm going to walk again, and I'm going to go beyond that, and get to where I want to be. If I'm not, well, then I'm in trouble. So
Mm,
uh, be the person you proclaim you are, and if you are,
yes.
then that'll get you through what you need to get through.
Yes, I love that. All right. What is a bold statement you can share with your audience today and that will change a paradigm, cause a paradigm shift in them?
Sure. Well, I think we all go through difficult times in life. So that's one thing that bonds us all together. We're going to go through struggles, and you don't have to hit the side of a building with a parachute to go through a difficult time. There's lots of difficult things we all go through. And the reality is, we have to give ourselves credit for having the strength internally to get through those times. I think so often you hear people with the way they talk about things, someone else has something that we don't have. And I don't mean possessions, I mean strength inside, or we see something, maybe someone more successful than us, like, well, they have something we don't have. And you have to get away from that thought process. You have the inner strength, and you can prove it to yourself. Because when I went through this situation, I was like, I didn't learn new lessons. I applied lessons I knew from the past to what I went through, and that was the most important lesson. If you have build a strong foundation, then you have all of the things you need to get through those difficult times. So you have to realize you have the strength to get through that difficult time. You're not alone, and you have the lessons from the past that you already learned to apply those to get through it. Because there's a lot of things I applied lesson wise when I couldn't have possibly, I wasn't thinking straight. I was on medication. It took me months later to say, well, why did I do that at that particular moment? And it was like a default mode that my body just knew what to do, whether it was surviving and saying, don't call anyone, I'll be okay. My body already kicked into that mode, or just getting through other situations that, I might have not known what I was doing or knew what to call it at the time, but I knew what to do because I had been through things before. Not the
Hmm.
same thing, but that's it. But people got to realize they have the strength inside to get through difficult things, and they need
If
to be
they build
willing
a
to
strong
accept help.
foundation, you said.
You
Hmm.
absolutely build a strong foundation and be willing to accept help. Don't take everything on yourself, and things aren't going to change right away. You have to realize, and what I realized myself is at first I was putting so much pressure to get better soon right away when I was laying in that bed for 10 weeks. And I realized you just have to think about getting a little bit better each day. And if you can
Hmm.
think about find a way to get 0.2% better or whatever it is, if you can do that every day, it compounds over time. And all of a sudden, a month goes by and you realize, well, I'm a lot better situation than I was before. I still might not be where I want to be, but I'm better than I was. So it's
That's life.
taking action, take responsibility, and say, I need to find a way to get better. And I got to find something. I know at the time when I was in the bed, I couldn't move, I couldn't use my body, but I had to find something to start building momentum to get better again.
And
And that's how I
that
started.
is a lot of bold statements that can really help you to cause a paradigm shift. I have another question. What's a bold move you'd like to make in the future?
Mm. Well, I think I started that, and the bold move was to share things I wouldn't have shared before unless someone asked me. It's so before, if someone asked me a question about going through something difficult in life, I would be happy to talk about it. But now it's taking that step forward and saying, don't wait for someone to ask me to explain it. It's for me to put my voice out there to say, this is what I went through. I hope this can help you go through it when you go through a difficult time yourself. So it's a matter of stepping forward and saying, I have something to say, and I hope it can help people. And so it's not waiting for someone, it's getting the message out there.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your insight and sharing your message. Your book is amazing. I've read it. I brought it with me to the spa this week, and someone saw me reading it and asked me where can they get it. And so I told them where to get it. I hope that increased, the awareness of your beautiful message of inspiration and hope and just perseverance. So I'm grateful that you came on here and shared that with my audience and with the people out there listening. Where can they get this book? Just tell them again, just before
Sure.
you go. Write it down, guys. Where can you connect more with where can I connect more with you?
Sure, jasondennen.com, just like it's spelled right on the screen. If you're an international person, then you want to go to Amazon's probably better to ship there. But otherwise, come to me. I'll sign it. You can connect with me, email me, send me, questions or thoughts or, whatever you may be. If I can be of help in any way, I'm happy to try to help. That's the mission out there, to help people get through difficult struggles. So don't feel like you can't reach out to me. My contact information is right there, so feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Oh, Jason, thank you so much. It's almost time already. I cannot believe I feel like we need more time. You have to come back again, please.
uh, I'm happy to come back as many times as you invite me back. Thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. I mean, if I don't if people like you don't invite me on and let me spread the message, then the message, my voice is only so loud. So thank you for helping me or allowing me to get the message out there. I greatly appreciate it.
Inspiring. Your book is inspiring. Thank you so much again. I really appreciate you. If you are interested in writing your book, you can send me an email, authordnicholson@gmail.com. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.